Once upon a time, in a quiet little village surrounded by green hills and a thick forest, there lived a poor woodcutter named John. John was a simple and hard-working man. He lived in a small wooden house with his wife and two young children. Life was not easy for them, but John always tried his best to provide for his family. Every morning before the sun rose, John would wake up early. He would eat a small breakfast prepared by his wife, pick up his old iron axe, and walk towards the forest. The forest was large and full of tall trees. Birds sang sweet songs in the branches, and cool winds blew gently through the leaves. John would spend the whole day cutting wood. After collecting enough wood, he tied the pieces together and carried them to the village market. There he sold the wood and earned just enough money to buy food and other basic things for his family. Even though John was poor, he was known throughout the village for one important quality. He was always honest. People trusted him because he never told lies and never cheated anyone. One bright morning, John walked deeper into the forest than usual. The sun shone through the trees, and the forest looked peaceful and beautiful. After walking for a while, he reached a big tree growing near the edge of a river. The river was wide and deep, and its water sparkled under the sunlight. "This tree will give me plenty of wood," John said to himself. He lifted his iron axe and began cutting the tree. Chop, chop, chop. The sound of the axe echoed through the quiet forest. John worked for a long time. Sweat rolled down his face as he continued chopping the tree. Suddenly, while swinging the axe with force, something unexpected happened. His hands slipped. Before he could catch it, the axe flew from his hands and fell straight into the river. Splash! The water swallowed the axe, and it quickly disappeared into the deep river. John ran to the riverbank and looked into the water, hoping to see his axe, but the river was too deep and the water was too dark to see anything. "Oh no!" John cried in great sadness. "My axe! That was my only axe! Without it I cannot cut wood, and without cutting wood, how will I earn money for my family?" John sat beside the river and held his head in his hands. He felt helpless and worried. The thought of going home without money made him even more upset. After some time, tears began to roll down his cheeks. Suddenly, something magical happened. The water in the river began to glow softly, and from the middle of the river, a beautiful fairy appeared. She rose slowly from the water, shining with a gentle light. The fairy looked at John kindly and asked, "Why are you crying, woodcutter?" John was surprised to see the fairy, but he respectfully replied, "My axe fell into the river. It is the only tool I have to earn my living. Without it, I cannot support my family." The fairy smiled gently and said, "Do not worry. I will try to help you." With that, the fairy dived into the river and disappeared beneath the water. A few moments later, she came back holding a bright golden axe. The axe shone brilliantly in the sunlight. She showed it to John and asked, "Is this your axe?" John looked carefully at the golden axe. It was beautiful and valuable, much more valuable than his old iron axe. But John shook his head and said honestly, "No, that is not mine." The fairy nodded and dived into the river again. After a short while, she returned with a shining silver axe. She asked again, "Is this your axe?" John looked at the silver axe. It was also very beautiful and worth a lot of money, but he again shook his head and said, "No, my axe is made of iron. This silver axe is not mine." This time, when she returned, she held an old iron axe in her hand. The moment John saw it, his face lit up with happiness. "Yes," he said with a big smile. "That is my axe. That is the one I lost." The fairy looked very pleased. She said, "You are an honest man. Even when you had the chance to take the gold and silver axes, you chose to tell the truth." John replied humbly, "I cannot take something that does not belong to me." The fairy was very impressed by his honesty. She said kindly, "Because you are honest and did not lie to take the gold or silver axe, I will reward you." "All three?" he asked with surprise. "Yes," the fairy said with a smile. "Honest people deserve great rewards." John thanked the fairy again and again. He was filled with happiness and gratitude. After that, the fairy slowly disappeared back into the river, and the water became calm again. John happily returned to his village carrying the 3 axes. When he reached home, he told his wife and children everything that had happened. Soon the whole village heard the story of John's honesty and the magical reward he received.